Kelly here with Kelly Soroka Life. And today in this video, I want to talk a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries, it seems like, has become one of those buzzwords that if you just have stronger boundaries, then your problems will disappear, or you are lacking in boundaries, and that is why this is something is happening in your life. And that is, it can be true, but like a lot of I think buzzwords that become popular in self-development and personal development, and just making your life better, it becomes a word it lacks its depth. And by missing out on that depth, by missing out on the nuances and practices that you can have and the ways that you can work with boundaries, is a way that we kind of gloss over the surface and don't really do the deep work. And any time that you want to improve a situation or make a change or create a new habit, or not feel guilt about something that you're doing, it's a process, and setting boundaries is a process. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And I'll share an exercise with you that you can do for yourself when you are especially facing a situation where you want to set some boundaries, or you want to strengthen your boundaries because you're feeling guilt. You feel bad about saying no. You feel like that you should be pleasing other people. You're hosting an event that you really don't want to host, or something that could very well be be held somewhere else without all the pressure on you. Or I know this was a big one when my kids were younger and in school, is being asked to serve on that committee, or serve on be a volunteer for something that they were involved in. And I homeschooled my kids, and was at home with them. And so I felt like I had some time that I wanted, that I could say yes to certain parts of that. But I know that a lot of times women and parents and mothers have jobs, and you work full time, and then are being asked to serve on a committee, or to do something outside of that. And it starts becoming, and then you start saying yes to more and more things, and then it becomes not something that's enjoyable, and it just becomes a something that you wish you had said no to in the beginning. That you are attending a function that your spouse is attending, and you have no interest in it, but you're saying yes because you want to not rock the boat. Or maybe you are skipping the gym, or skipping a yoga class, or skipping something that is good for you or healthy for you, because you feel like you need to do for other people before you can take time for yourself. And we all get caught in that trap. We all get caught in that trap of doing things out of obligation, doing things because we feel like we can't say no, or that we shouldn't say no. And so, and like I said, sometimes there are these situations, and you do want to say yes, you do want to participate, or you do want to go host the function or do the event. But if you're doing it because you feel guilty, then that's when to work on those boundaries. And setting strong boundaries is a process and something that takes time. But as you work on this process, then you realize by first going inside, looking at your values, looking at the things that are very important to you, so that you know when you say yes to something that you're saying a definite yes, because it is something that brings you joy, it makes you happy, it's something that you feel good about doing, and that it goes along with your values. It goes along with the things that you're working towards in your life. Or it's something where you're taking care of yourself. You're doing something that is taking care of yourself. Maybe you've been asked to work overtime, and you are the one working overtime over and over and over again, and in those evenings where you would normally be going to the gym, you're then working overtime and not taking care of yourself. And it adds up. One or two times doesn't seem like a bad thing, but once you get out of the habit of 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 going to the gym, or going to yoga, or going for a run, or going for a swim, or whatever it is, or just going for a walk and getting out in nature, doing something that is taking care of yourself, then you're saying yes to someone else's agenda, sometimes someone else's problem, and you are the one that's fixing it. And it's okay to help. It's okay to do things for other people in a way that is helpful, but it's when you're doing it at the detriment of you, or you're the people pleaser. And again, I think that's a big buzzword, but it's one that's very helpful, because we do want to please other people. We want other people to see us as dependable and responsible, and the one that's in charge, or the one that can get things done. And it's not always you that needs to do it. And because if you have made obligations, or you have your own values that you want to work on, and that you want to do better in your life, then that's when working on the boundaries is a really good idea, and starting this process of looking at your values and looking at what it is that you want. And you might start to find this kind of tension, or feeling guilty, or this not something not just sitting right with you, because you are in a different phase of life. Your values have changed. Things that you want for yourself, things that you need to make yourself feel happy, the things that bring you joy, the things that the relationships that you're in, those things have changed. And if you're moving into, especially moving into midlife and beyond, that can be a time of great change, a time of great shifting, and your values change. The things that I know, that when I was younger, 10, 15 years ago, my values were very different, because I was raising children, and I was homeschooling, and I was staying at home with my kids. And so the values that I had about raising them and making sure that their needs were taken care of was very important. And that was what I wanted to do at that point in my life, and what was making me happy, and what I wanted at that point. But now they're all adults. They don't, they're not at home, and they, don't need that kind of attention, and they don't need those specific things from me anymore. So moving on to in a different stage of my life, in a different place in my life, is my values have changed. And if you asked me back then, will your values change? I would probably say no, I'll always have the same values. But it's not something that has to stay permanent. It's not something that has to stay static, just like your boundaries. Your boundaries are there. They're there for you to, and when I was raising kids, my boundaries, I had to keep those boundaries. I had to make sure that, that I protected that time that we did school. And I needed to protect that time that I made sure that, they had good meals, and that, we went grocery shopping on the weekends, and they had the books that they needed and the resources they needed. And if they needed extra things to make sure they needed those things. And so that my boundaries were there. But now I have very different boundaries, and I can make my days, my calendar looks a lot different than it used to. And I'm glad that I have time to do other things. I have time to be interested in and volunteer if I want to say yes to that. And so as you're making this shift and this transitional time in life, and your boundaries start to feel overwhelming, or because they need to be changed, or made flexible, or there are things that you feel are very important to you now that maybe weren't important to you at one time, and things keep kind of encroaching upon those times, or that the time that you want to spend, or the decisions that you're making, or you're working late every night, and the worst thing, not getting paid, or not getting the recognition for it. And so it's that, and so your boundaries are there, and you want to do this thing or these things outside of work for yourself. And you should take care of yourself, and you should have those times. But when it starts being just infringed upon all the time, then just that's when the boundary work comes into play. And so as we grow, accustomed to certain roles in our lives, if we're, as women, that might be as a mother or wife or sister or daughter, and we've got these roles. But as we get older, those things shift, and the relationships that we have as those in those roles, the relationship with those people, that also changes. And sometimes it's good, and you can then expand your boundaries to bring in and to make these relationships bigger or stronger. And sometimes you realize that it's not a relationship that is for you right now. It doesn't work for your values. So this is a practice that you can do to start that process, to start the process of letting go of that guilt, and saying no, and practicing saying no. Because the more that you can do it on your own, and the more that you can do it internally, then the easier it's going to be when you are doing it with another person, or when someone else is asking you to do something. And you can use no as a complete sentence, and you can say no, and you're not saying no, but and having to explain yourself. I know in my past, I would do that so many times. And when I knew that I was going to be asked to do something, I would I would be in a panic, because at first I wouldn't want to say no. But I knew that I it was something that I did need to say no to. And then I would be just going over in my mind all these things that what can I say? How can I make this sound like I'm not saying no? Or how can I come up with a really good excuse? And so it's that no, but, and there, it shouldn't be that. It should be no. And if you feel like that you want to explain yourself, or that, it's something, it might be something very simple, like, a friend and asks you to pick them up at the airport, and you would really like to, but you know that you have a meeting that you have to be at and you can't do it. And so, just to say, no, I can't, I have a meeting, and I just, I can't do that. And so if it's something like that, but when you're trying to explain, if you're being asked maybe to serve on a committee, and you're trying to make it, sound like, I'd really like to do this, but I don't, and that you would not enjoy it, that you would not, you don't have the time, you have other obligations that are taking up space in your calendar right then, and saying, and you can just say, no, I don't have the time, but you can, have that, to say no, and not feel guilty. And it's really hard. It's hard not to feel guilty or make excuses, or feel like that we have to explain ourselves and explain why we're saying no. So let's work on this kind of process that you can do, and I'll have this down in the description. So if you want to go back and do this, you can go back and listen to it again. If you want to do it, and just pause the video at these different times, and then you can do this practice as well. But I'll have it, written down below so that you can see it. And if you want to do it on your own, or, take notes or write it down, then you can do that as well. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we'll just kind of bring ourselves into the present, our energy in, and our focus in. Take a deep breath. And to do this, you can kind of, if you're just listening right now and you want to go back and do this later, it's a really good idea to write it down, and to get it out, in the open. So the first step is to write down 4 values that are important to you at this moment, and write only 4, and don't overthink it, because you can always change your list or add more later. This is not a time for, you to really do some kind of in-depth, values assessment. This is just for you right now, in this present moment. What are 4 things that are valuable to you right now, or your values right now? Then in step number 2, you're just going to pick only one of the values, and then take 3 minutes to write about what this value means to you right now in the present. So just write it. And does it, again, it's nothing. This is just a way to start the process, to get those kind of things moving in your mind, so that you start thinking about the values, and start thinking about your boundaries, and preparing yourself to say no without the guilt. So once you have that one value, you've written about it, then from your journaling, create an affirmation that supports you in saying no to anything that is not true to your value. So an affirmation is kind of I like to think of it as a support to your boundaries. It's something, what your boundaries are, the things that you that you want in your life and things that you don't. And so this affirmation kind of helps you keep that boundary in place. It's very simple. It can be, just a few words, it can be a sentence, but it's something that comes from that writing. And again, it doesn't have to be polished, it doesn't have to be beautiful. It's just needs to be something that you can say out loud and carry with you over the next few days. So then step number 4 is practice saying your affirmation aloud. So say it out loud. And so that you are ready the next time you want to say no and you have that support and the affirmation to stick to your decision. So I wrote about, and so one of the values that is very important to me as I'm getting older is healthy eating. I feel like that during most of my life, I go back and forth. I have times when I eat very healthy and I feel really good. And then I have times where, and usually it's, a lot of emotional eating. And so I'll have times when I don't eat very healthy at all. And as I'm getting older, I feel the need more and more to eat healthy and to say no to the takeout and to make something at home, even if it's a very simple meal, something that I can just put together in a couple of minutes, but it's going to be better than stopping at even the grocery store and getting pre-made food, or or going to a fast food restaurant. So this is one of the things that I'm really working on. And because something that kind of comes and goes, I have this boundary, and I know that there's going to be times that I'm going to slip up, that there are times that I'm going to not have a healthy meal. But when there are times, but I can use this so that that's only once in a while when I choose to maybe eat out. Maybe it's a weekend or special occasion, and I want to, I'm going to eat out and have a meal that's not very healthy. So, I'm thinking about that, and I kind of write about that. And so, thinking about, and this is the coming from that, the the affirmation that came from that is I said, I choose to make healthy meals at home and say no to unhealthy takeout meals. So I said, I choose to make healthy meals at home and say no to unhealthy takeout meals. So, when one day when, I'm tired, or maybe I get home late, or maybe I've been out, or, something, and I just think, it'd be so easy just to stop by the fast food place that's on the way home, or, stop by the grocery store and, get, a sandwich. And then I can say, I know that that's not going to make me feel good. And I have something that I can make at home that will make me feel good. And this again is very personal, because I know that this is, to me, this is a good choice for me to keep that boundary of eating healthy, and within that doing something that's one small step that I can take. And so the next time I'm kind of tempted to just eat an unhealthy meal, then I know that I can go home and make something very easily and feel much better about after I've eaten. And sometimes, like I said, there's going to be times when you want to step outside your boundaries, and that's okay. But the point of this process is to work on those boundaries and to be able to be ready, and so that you can say no without, no, but I've eaten, I've eaten healthy the last few days, and so, I deserve it, and I'm just gonna, let myself go, or, something like that, so that it's not this no, but it's a, you know, no, I'm going to make this other choice. And then maybe, that during the weekend, then I will say, yes, I'm going to go out and have, a meal somewhere because, I want to, whatever. And so I know that, I'm going, I want to spend maybe all, I'm going to spend the day maybe cleaning my house. And so I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be tired. I'm not really going to make something. And so I'm going to say yes to that takeout meal on that day for a specific reason. And I won't feel guilty about saying no, or, I won't feel bad afterwards when I don't say no. So this is a practice that you can start. And this, again, I feel like an affirmation helps you with your boundary, helps you start saying these things out loud, so that, and it starts getting you thinking about your values and thinking about things that are important to you in the moment, things that are important to you right now, things that you want to work on, and looking forward, and kind of thinking back, and maybe it's something that you just kind of automatically say, oh yes, this is one of my values, and maybe it's not anymore, and that's totally okay, because we all change, we all evolve, we all make shifts in all parts of our lives. And so kind of starting to shake that loose, and get those, thinking about different things and different ways that you want to treat yourself, and different ways, that things that you want in your life right now. So that is it for our boundaries today. And this is again, I'll leave this for you if you want to do this for yourself. And again, you could listen to it and just pause the video, as we go along, and do this exercise. Or if you want to do it and write it down, I'll have it written down for you as well. So I hope wherever you are right now, where I am, it is the middle of summer and it is very hot. So I'm going to have a cold drink and enjoy the rest of my day. And I hope that you do the same wherever you are. So let me know how it goes with this exercise and this little practice. I would love to know. And I will see you again soon. Bye.